There's this I'm going to call it easy proliferation of shadow AI. It's very easy to turn on like an AI feature to any tool that the company has. And it's very reminiscent of shadow IT like 10 or 15 years ago. There's a lot of us trying to figure out how to strike that balance between managing the risk or accepting the risk and not hindering adoption to allow for all those amazing productivity gains.
Welcome to When Trust Meets AI. I'm your host, Adam Markowitz, and this is the show where we explore how AI is reshaping risk, compliance, and assurance in companies today. Every episode, we sit down with those who are in the trenches, the CISOs, GRC leaders, founders, and analysts who are redefining how companies adopt AI responsibly, manage risk intelligently, and turn trust into a competitive advantage. Stick with us, and you'll learn how to move GRC from the Department of No to the Department of Go. Let's get into it. Welcome to the podcast, Tolga. Thank you so much for joining me today on Trust Meets AI. We've had a lot of conversations over the years.
Absolutely.
You've been a source of inspiration and knowledge and value for myself and really everyone at Drata for a long time. So I'm excited to do this, have this conversation more publicly, I guess you could say, where everyone could get the same value from it as we have. So thank you again for joining.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Well, for those that don't know you, maybe you can start with just telling us a little about yourself, your current role, what you're most focused on in that role.
Sure, yeah. So a little bit about me. I've been in GRC about 20 years now. For the last 11 plus years, I've been piece by piece building the GRC function at Dropbox. So I'm the current head of GRC. And when I say piece by piece, this is all the components you can imagine, from compliance to risk to third-party risk to policy to business continuity. And more recently, we've been spending a lot of time ramping up our customer trust function and building our AI governance program. And so that's where I've been really focused lately.
Got it. Well, I want to almost go through that entire progression, but we'll save it here for the rest of the convo. The conversations I've been having almost all year have been on the intersection of trust in AI, of course. We sit happily at the intersection of both those things. And it's a bit of an arms race in terms of adopting AI within all of our companies, but doing it in a way that doesn't sacrifice or risk trust. So everyone's got their own definition for trust. I probably use and hear the word 100 times a day, but it's always fun to ask folks just to kick things off how they define the word trust and what that means to you in the world of AI today.
Totally, yeah. And I gotta say, I'm not making up this story, but just yesterday I was talking to my kindergartner. He's 5, and just totally unprompted, completely out of the blue, he said, "You know what, Daddy? You can't build anything without trust." And I just kind of paused. We were just walking on the sidewalk. I'm like, where did he get that gem, right? I truly have no idea where he got that. But of course, like, we know it's all true. You can't build anything without trust. And so, in terms of how do we define that? What does that mean, right? We all have like a inherent and instinctual sense of what trust is, right? I think quite simply it means you've assessed the other party to be a safe place where you can open up or be vulnerable with the things that you value, whether that's possessions or thoughts or even feelings, right? So in a SaaS context, it's the same thing, right? You've assessed that this other party, you can be vulnerable and you can share your data, you can share your work, you can share confidential secrets with this other party, and they're going to keep it secure, they're going to keep it private, they're going to do the right things with that data. And I think it's really that simple, right?
How we do that is where I guess it gets a little less simple. But we'll get into that. But it's pretty amazing to hear. When you and I first met, your son was just born. He's already talking about trust. He's ahead of the curve. I love it. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about AI in practice. Within the company, I guess here now towards the end of 2025, where are you seeing AI create the biggest impact within the org today?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now, in terms of like the most immediate impact, it's got to be in the developer productivity space, right? Tools like Claude Code and Cursor and what have you have just been completely changing like the fundamental process and approach to writing code and to taking something from an idea to a prototype, to a feature, to a product, to an iterated product. It's just absolutely speeding up that process and really changing what is possible, right? And so to me, that is by far the biggest impact.
How about the flip side of that? Where is it creating the most friction, if anywhere at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of friction, you just mentioned it, right? Particularly in our space, in the GRC space, it's really dealing with TPRM, third party risk management, or supply chain risk, if you want to call it that, right? There's this very, I'm going to call it easy proliferation of shadow AI. It's very easy to turn on like an AI feature to any tool that the company has. And it's very reminiscent of shadow IT like 10 or 15 years ago. And just like in that cycle, there's a lot of us trying to figure out how to strike that balance between managing the risk or accepting the risk, and not hindering adoption to allow for all those amazing productivity gains. But also, yeah, like managing the risk is hard. And so, yeah.
So as you brought on more AI, have there been any kind of big surprises with just the potential or maybe limitations to the tools you brought on?
Yeah, I mean, maybe in terms of surprise, I'd say kind of there's like a spectrum from impressed to disappointed, right? And so recently I was really impressed. I asked an AI to parse like a very densely legally worded 50-page audit report and extract the findings and recommendations and prioritize them. And I don't fully trust it, so I went by and I checked it myself, and it came back that it was 100% accurate in terms of the way it parsed it. And not only that, but it like actually prioritized the recommendations in alignment with my own judgment. And that was like kind of freaky, if I'm honest, right? Like kind of scary, but very amazing. Um, and then conversely, I recently gave it a simple task. I said, hey, we have 3 lists of 20 items here. Like, can you collate these and compare and give me, where the differences are and between which of the 3 lists are the differences? And that came back with 2 or 3 errors. And it was like, after the prior experience, that was really stunning, right? So, I think we're riding this wave of up and down quality. Yeah.
It's a spectrum, like you said, impressed to disappointed. And it sounds like you almost gave it too easy of a task.
Yeah, sometimes.
Is there, I guess on that, are there low-hanging fruit areas where bringing AI has really helped free up some of your team to focus on more strategic things and let the AI kind of do some of the more medial tasks?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it's sped up quite a bit in terms of like processing security questionnaires, those endless vendor security questionnaires with the 80 questions and the 100 questions, processing those, it's been much faster. We've also looked at, are there other areas of compliance where that can be helpful in terms of, third party like compliance screening, outside of just security and risk. And yeah, on sort of the road compliance tasks or those more menial tasks, in evidence collection and gathering, we're still at the beginning of that journey, but we can already see the benefits coming.
Is that where you like looking forward, if you had a wish list or even a crystal ball of where you'd want to see it going with AI in that regard? Is it on kind of monitoring evidence collection, or are there other areas as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think the monitoring and evidence collection, absolutely, like that everybody has to get there if they're not there already. But it's the next step, right? It's analyzing the evidence, coming up with the initial assessment, making sure that it satisfies not just the control, but all the downstream mapped like frameworks and criteria. I think there are tools out there that are beginning to realize that potential. But that's when it gets really exciting in terms of the productivity gains.
It is very exciting when we could start even sometimes on our end with previous questionnaires that were sent to start creating the criteria itself for different categories of vendors. We could start with the evidence itself and then work all the way backwards to what automated test of that control might look like to generate that kind of evidence. It is. There's no shortage of areas in which we're going to deploy AI to help save our customers time and help them build trust.
Yeah, it's there's so much road to travel there, so it's super exciting.
That's the heart of it. I mean, that is the question to ask. It comes up in just about every one of the conversations I have with security and GRC leaders today. It started really last year, but it's just dominated every single one. Like, how do you get that level of trust or to that trustworthiness when it comes to a new AI tool, adopting or even turning AI on within an existing tool of yours?
It's not easy. And I think it's not easy because sort of the tools we have. So if you go back, right, what we just talked about, what is trust, right? It's an assessment that you can be vulnerable, you can open up, you can share data, right? doing that assessment is really tough at the moment. We have some kind of early tools, right? You can tweak your security questionnaire. You can look at an ISO 42001 certification. But they're just that. They're early tools. A lot of folks don't know how to use them. A lot of folks don't know how to respond to them when you send those sorts of AI-inflected questionnaires. And it's taken a while to build a trust ecosystem just around security and SOC 2. And I think it's going to take, hopefully not that long, but it's going to still take a while to build the same sort of trust ecosystem about AI. And so in the interim, we are managing with sort of half-baked tools, no faults of the tools, but like half-baked process to try and intuit whether it's trustworthy or not,
Yeah. No, it's along similar lines. I often tell people I feel like we're still riding this wave or seeing this demand from just the proliferation of SaaS and the whole SOC 2 becoming the bare minimum of assurance, and obviously, as we say, a bare minimum. But now at the AI boom, it's kind of just a lot of the same risks, just magnified. And so it's going to be more attention and a kind of a new way of evaluating that risk. But like you said, it's early, it's new, and it's not black and white in how it's being done. This is great. This is why we have these conversations, to see how everyone is doing it in their own unique way, and where we could add value.
The industry is catching up, right? Those tools are developing, right? So like ISO 42001 is a great start, right? But there are a whole set of security teams and security startups that are also trying to sort out what is the benchmark way of doing this, the way that SOC 2 has become. The Cloud Security Alliance has their own version of this. It's not clear who's going to win sort of this benchmarking status, right? How SOC 2 came about was an accident in its own right as being the benchmark standard, but there's a lot of iteration, and so I'm very confident we'll be in a really good space, but it's going to take probably a couple years, right?
That's it's actually a good transition. You've said like 20 years. You've had a front row seat to the evolution of the entire categories. Obviously, security engineering, GRC, trust and assurance. Like, I remember an early conversation we had where you said something to the effect of, "I can't believe there's a company like yours out there that is spending all day, every day, obsessing over how to automate my manual work," right? Like that was if you told me that, I think you said something like, "If you told me that 10 years ago, I think you're crazy." And so that always stuck out to us. One, it was super inspiring and motivating for the team to hear that.
That was not the intent to inspire, but yeah.
Well, it definitely lit up an extra fire that was already there. Okay, if you had to kind of even like milestone it out over the last 20 years of your career, like what's changed the most in that evolution? And has it been accelerating over maybe the last 5-10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all gone hand in hand with the rise of SaaS, and now with the rise of AI, it is accelerating, right? And ultimately, like this is all about trust. This is all about third-party risk, and the flip side of it being assurance, right? Back when I started, assurance and sort of SaaS 70 reports, before they were called SOC 2 reports, were for very niche and specific needs of one customer and one service provider, that they absolutely had to have a validated, audited solution, right? But as cloud adoption has increased, as SaaS apps have been built and proliferated everywhere, and now AI apps are taking off, right? Everyone understands that like supply chain risk or third-party risk is the biggest risk of the company, because you can control your own security. You can't control someone else's security. You can try to verify, you can build these trusted relationships, but it's not truly in your control. And people are realizing that increasing portions of their business and their IT stack are not fully in their control. And so, yeah, that's been a continual ramp for 20 years, I'd say.
And because those are two sides of the same coin, right? The third-party risk management and then assurance. There is like this optimistic view that we have and I have of kind of leading by example. Companies basically proactively sharing the information that should provide that assurance of their own security compliance posture, and then ultimately wanting that in return from their vendors. Do you see that happening? Are you witnessing that be something that's kind of accelerating, or has that always been the case?
The proactive sharing?
Yeah, like the concept
Yeah.
of trust center wasn't really you go back 5 years ago, it was still, I mean, people kind of scratch their heads when you say trust center.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that certainly has been growing, but it is still sort of early on, right? Oftentimes it started off as reactive, right? Like you ask me for a SOC 2, I will give you our SOC 2. It wasn't sort of plastered on the website or in a nice fancy trust portal. These days, I think increasingly people do have trust portals and they're sort of proving out and they're trying to add trust transparency. But even in that, it's hard until you get behind the curtain, you sign the NDA, you look at the report, you read the white paper, you talk to the human on the other side. And so, again, this is yet another evolution where more transparency is good, but to get enough transparency, I think, to build a trusted relationship, you kind of have to get beyond what's just publicly available.
Yeah, is there a concept of a trust dashboard within your team that you use even internally with reporting for employees, for the board, for leadership team?
Yeah, we've put together a trust dashboard. I mean, I don't think I've called it a trust dashboard before, but it's essentially we have a series of scorecards that each of our sort of trust teams, so our security team, our privacy team, our compliance team, our reliability team, and our AI governance team, they put together a scorecard. Those metrics are bespoke to sort of our business and what we think are insightful. Um, and sort of at the top of that scorecard, we use quantitative risk management. So we use FAIR methodology for those that are familiar. And so in the end, risk gets boiled up to annualized loss exposure, ALE, which is a dollar number. And those are sort of easily consumable stats and metrics that can be followed by an executive team or a board.
Is there a concept within the company of kind of the flip side of ALE, like annual loss exposure, more like revenue enablement, meaning how much these metrics, these programs from security and GRC are actually helping influence or accelerate revenue?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's less mature, but we are starting to do that. So, not a plug, but we use SafeBase at Dropbox, right? And we're able to generate a metric called Trust Influenced ARR, right? And that ties through from our CRM to the views and downloads and engagements in the Trust portal. And yeah, I mean, that is a new concept. Like I think we've really only nailed down the reporting of that to where we like it about a year ago. But increasingly, that is going to be kind of a side by side, right? Assurance versus risk management dashboard.
And I love it. Yeah, no, that is again, selfishly, that's one of my favorite metrics. One, it helps illustrate the vision we've had to prove that trust is a business enabler. It's a growth accelerator. To be able to finally prove it feels really good, and give our customers the ability to do that is really what we set out to do. So that's great to hear. How about the evolution, not just of the technology or the market expectations, but what about like from your team and the skill set perspective? Like I talked to a lot of folks that are building out teams, security teams, GRC teams, and they're asking, what does the archetype of the profile look like of a GRC practitioner today and even a few years into the future, given everything that's happening?
Yeah, I mean, in some sense, I don't know that the profile of the practitioner is changing, but the skill set is certainly changing, right? And so we have, worked with our team to make sure that everybody is taking sort of like baseline AI training to understand how models work, how LLMs work, how the engagement context engines work, right? This kind of upskilling, we all need to do it. Like I've had to do it absolutely, right? To learn what is this that we're dealing with now, right? And so fundamentally, that's been a part of it. But in addition, as I mentioned, we are responsible for an AI governance program, and that takes like a much deeper set of knowledge. And so we've been hiring people with backgrounds in, pre-AI, I guess it would be called ML, right? And people that sort of understand this at one layer deeper than a GRC team has ever had to engage before. And so that's been really exciting as well.
Nice. Makes a lot of sense. I know it's so overused at this point, but I think it's overused because there's a lot of truth to it. AI is not going for your job, but somebody using AI is. And so the upskilling, the learning that's taking place across almost basically every team, every individual, it's intense, but it should be that way. I think I've asked you this before, but it's good for the public to hear. What's a GRC myth that you'd want to bust, or maybe a misconception that you commonly see when it comes to GRC?
I can't believe we're still having this conversation, right? That we had 5 or 6 years ago now. But it is a myth that like you can get a SOC 2 in 20 days for $5,000, right?
We talked about that our very first conversation.
Right. I think it was our very first. It's just ridiculous. Like, I guess it's not a myth in that it is possible. You can spend 20 days and $5,000 and get a SOC 2, but it is impossible to do that well, right? To do a quality job, to move the, to get anything done in terms of security or actual risk management, right? It's not going to happen in 20 days, right?
It's so obvious. That is kind of sad that we still have to say it. But I do remember that vividly. Our first conversation 5 years ago, you're like, you said something to the effect of, I've never seen this messaging from you, and then I applaud you for it. And I said, like, of course, why would we say SOC 2 in 2 weeks or less? It's just a silly concept. It's setting the wrong message, especially given the vision of what we're trying to do here. So, we bonded over that immediately.
I mean, I'm so grateful that a lot of people understand that now, but I'm also still very frustrated that I still see this. I still see this out there on billboards. I still see this on, reports on LinkedIn of people getting SOC 2 reports that don't even make any sense and don't follow the professional standards and the guidelines. It's wild. And so I think we just have to keep pushing through and raising the bar, right?
There's more people talking about this though than just you and I. It's just nice. It's refreshing. It's so funny, like with all its evolution and how rapid it's happening, that concept is dying slowly. But I guess I understand why. What's one thing as CEO I should be asking my GRC leader at Drata?
Your GRC leader. I think
CISO or GRC leader.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are slightly different, right? I mean, I think for the CISO, I'm gonna cheat and say two things, right? I think I'm gonna say, first is a very simple, like the CISO should just be checking in and saying, how are we doing with security these days? Give me like the 2-minute elevator pitch, right? And then once they take that in, right, I would go, how safe do you feel? Right. This is another version of the sort of classic, like what keeps you up at night, right? The CEO probably doesn't need like the specific scenario that keeps you up at night. They need the temperature check. They need the vibe check. Like, how safe do you feel, right? And more important than asking it once is asking it often, monthly, right? To really stay kind of in touch.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Would be different for a GRC leader.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a GRC leader these days, we'll get a sense of the risk and we'll get a sense of the compliance through kind of the normal day-to-day interactions. But the assurance piece, right? I think they should absolutely be asking about, what are we doing about customer trust? What are we doing to enable the business and drive revenue?
Over your 20-year career, have there been any influential books, movies, podcasts, anything that you'd recommend, or anything that first thing that comes to mind when I ask that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge books person, but I would say I'll go way back. I'm feeling very old talking about 20 years, right? But back when I was a teenager, there was a little known movie called Pirates of Silicon Valley. I don't know if you ever see that. Yeah, it was very little known. I think it's like a late 90s movie, low budget. And it told the story of Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and a few other folks and what they did in the 80s and the 90s. And it really made an impression on me, right? Because, when I was growing up, I knew I always wanted to be in tech, but it was like very daunting, the concept. Like, these are geniuses, they're changing the world. Like, what right do I have to be here, right? But the movie also showed that like these are imperfect people that make mistakes, and sometimes they make the wrong choices, and sometimes they display low EQ, right? Which I don't think was a term in the 90s. And so, I kind of saw that, and I kind of thought to myself, like, oh, like maybe I can play in the sandbox of tech, right? Maybe I can help with doing something more trustworthy. I didn't use those words when I'm a teenager, but like, maybe I can help make this better and cleaner a little bit. So yeah,
you got to check that one out. Well, maybe you just answered it, but I was going to ask you if you could go back to that teenage version of Tolga. What advice would you give to yourself?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think it's really just about not sweating the small stuff, right? Everything feels huge when you're younger. Everything feels like a big mistake, or there's a big compliance deficiency, or a big, everything is sort of dramatized. And so I would definitely say, try to put things in bigger perspective, right? Building trust with people typically is more important than this thing that went wrong in that one project. As compliance people, we live in the details. And so we see findings and problems, and we're excited but thrown off, and we're race to fix the problem, right? And of course, it's important to fix the problem, but I think like how you manage the relationships with people throughout the way is like far more impactful, right?
Absolutely. I think that's a hard thing to teach, especially to younger versions of ourselves, or now with kids. We're noticing like perspective is a tough thing, that without the time to get that perspective, it's tough to just push on someone. But if there was a way, that would be the advice I would give myself too. Last question on the topic of AI, just maybe it's in your personal life. Like, if we're all adopting AI within our companies, we're upskilling, we're learning every single day. Is there somewhere within your personal life where AI is having a big impact?
Yeah, I mean, my family likes to travel a lot, and so it has been a fantastic travel planner. It has been really wonderful to, say, okay, we're going to be in this city for 2 days, and we want to have, 3 kids' activities and 2 awesome dinners, and we can only use public transit, go, right? And like set it up. And it's just incredible what it's able to put together.
It is pretty amazing. Yeah, we put together a couple of trips recently, and it's pretty amazing. Just I can't imagine. I mean, I remember my grandmother was a travel agent before the internet.
Oh my gosh.
So like showing her this, right? Like, hey, we're going to go here and check out what one little prompt generated. It's beyond mind blowing.
Like weeks of research. Right?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much again, Tolga. This has been a great conversation. Like all of our conversations, I'm just super excited. This one's going to be shared publicly for folks to
Absolutely
get some of the value that I've been getting.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love this. I think it's just been awesome that we're able to continue to tell this story and continue to work on these tough problems as AI comes around too, right? Like really ramp up what GRC was to what it will be. It's unbelievably great. It's really exciting.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Cool.
Thanks for joining me for this episode. If today's conversation gave you clarity, a new perspective, or something you want to take back to your team, make sure to share the podcast with another security or GRC practitioner. We're a community, and the more we learn from each other, the stronger our industry becomes. For more insights on trust management and AI-driven GRC, you can always connect with us at Drata. Don't forget to follow us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. And if you really like what you hear, please take the time to rate the podcast so we can help more people discover what happens when trust meets AI. I'll see you on the next episode.